Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. It's still very dark behind me and I'm not sure why. There's nothing really I can do about that. Anyway, hey guys, welcome back to my channel, and today is a slightly different video. I was going to film another one of my autistic traits video, but this topic I'm going to talk about has actually come up quite a lot recently in conversations, and I feel it's really important to talk about it and something that I really just need to get off my chest and express my opinion on. So today I'm going to be talking all about the phrase, but we're all a little bit autistic, right? My face says it all. So let's get into the video. So I talk a lot on my channel about my personal experience being autistic and everything to do with autism, but I'm going to start by actually explaining what is autism, because I'm sure a lot of you probably have that question. Well, according to the NHS, autism is described as a lifelong developmental condition that affects how people communicate, interact and process information. So, and I'm not going to lie, I was very much in the same boat as a lot of you people watching this video. When I was in secondary school, we used to have like a World Autism Awareness Day, and someone would come in and do a presentation about what is autism and all this stuff, and I had absolutely no idea what it was or what it was about, and there was maybe a part of me that thought, oh, I can relate to this, but not really, and then we sort of forgot about it and moved on with it. And it's only really in these past couple of years have I really started to delve deeper into what actually autism is and how it affects a person, and delving more into my life experience and seeing how it presents in my life that I may not have realised before. So there is a criteria to be diagnosed with autism, which of course there's a criteria to be diagnosed with lots of things. For example, to be diagnosed with a broken leg, you would have to find it very painful to walk on, I guess, and the x-rays would show up with the bones that are snapped in half, or I don't know how it works, that's just an example. So same as for autism, there is a criteria. So to meet the diagnostic criteria for autism, according to the DSM-5, a person must have persistent deficits in 3 areas of social communication and interaction, and restricted and repetitive behaviours. And some of the main signs that you will find in autistic people is finding it hard to understand what others are thinking or feeling, getting very anxious about social situations, finding it hard to make friends, seeming blunt or rude towards others without meaning to, finding it hard to express your feelings and your emotions, taking things very literally, having the same routine and getting stressed or anxious when they have to change, not understanding social rules, avoiding eye contact, getting too close to other people, or not liking touch from other people, noticing small details, patterns, smells or sounds, having a keen interest in certain subjects and getting hyperfixated on them, and liking to plan things carefully before doing them. Now, to be diagnosed with autism, quite a lot of these need to be prevalent in your life, and I know that a lot of neurotypical people would say, well, I can relate to this, I do that all the time, or I have that. And the difference is with an autistic person is the intensity that they deal these things with and the amount that they have to deal with them with. And that is the difference, is you might not like someone touching you because it bothers you, but for someone that's autistic, if someone touches them, it will make them really uncomfortable and sick and Like, so for example, you might get stressed when your plan has to change, but for an autistic person, they might get stressed and anxious because their whole day revolves around doing things exactly the same. In a world that is so uncertain and unpredictable, having a routine can make things feel a bit more safe and relaxed and just more comfortable, knowing what's going to happen, when it's going to happen, how it's going to happen. And when that can change, that can lead to a shutdown or a meltdown, or people end up just cancelling all their plans, not being able to function because this thing has stressed them out and made them anxious so much that they're now not able to do anything. So what the criteria is saying is that you need to have in your life a certain amount of these traits in an abnormal amount and intensity to have a diagnosis of autism. Symptoms must be present since childbirth, basically, since you were a child. It's not something that they're aware of that can develop as you grow older, although they find in a lot of cases that people become very good at masking their traits, that it's not always apparent and prevalent in people until they reach adulthood, where all of a sudden life feels overwhelming, things get too much, and it all sort of shows up in someone's life. And that is why I think a lot of people are becoming diagnosed later in life, and that's completely normal. It's all accepted, it's all a diagnosis. It has to cause significant impairment in someone's life. So for example, a neurotypical person, which I will use a lot in my videos to describe someone that isn't autistic. A neurotypical person might line up their shoes in a nice order, but they won't get stressed out if they're not lined up, and they won't spend all day making sure they're particularly perfect, because otherwise they will get stressed out that it's not all how it should be. Or they might not spend half an hour before bed every night lining their toys up all in a row, or they can't go to sleep properly. You can't be diagnosed with autism if these traits can be explained by another comorbidity. So for example, you might just have very, very bad anxiety, which means you don't like going to parties, but that doesn't mean you're autistic. Someone that's autistic might struggle going to parties because of the loud music, all the people and the conversations, the balloons, the lights going off. So that is one of the important things to note, that you can struggle with things that autistic people struggle with, but it doesn't mean that you have autism. So one thing that these conversations have really got me thinking about is, if so many people are saying, but we're all on the spectrum somewhere, but we're all a little bit autistic, I wonder whether they actually are autistic. Has anyone ever thought that? Because if they really think that they can relate to things that one person on the spectrum is going through, which it is a spectrum, everyone's experiences being autistic is different, then perhaps they need to evaluate their life and think, oh, maybe I am autistic, and they should go through a diagnosis process. However, I do think a lot of people just say that because they think, oh yeah, I can relate to that, like everyone does that, that's so normal. And when people say that, it can be very invalidating for autistic people, because it makes us feel like what we go through and things we struggle with don't need help and support, and should be pushed aside because they're normal and they're nothing to worry about. And that can be really debilitating and difficult for people on the spectrum to deal with. It sort of feels like people are saying we're not allowed to struggle with things because, well, Everyone struggles with these things. It's nothing different to you. And when I tell people I'm autistic, it's not that I want someone to say, oh, congratulations, like, that's amazing, you're so different. Like, I'm not showing off that I'm autistic. It's that I want people to understand that maybe I think in a different way and I might need more time to process things, or I might not understand things that people say or do. So it's just having that awareness from people that I might just need a bit more time with things. When people say, but we're all a little bit autistic, that's basically like me saying, oh, but we're all pregnant because we all throw up all the time and it might happen in the morning. It just seems ridiculous to me. I'll give you a few other examples. For example, when people say they can relate to autistic traits that I might talk about, well, of course you will, because autistic traits are exactly the same as human traits. It's just the intensity and the regularity that we experience them on. For example, yes, a neurotypical person might really like a song and listen to it more than once, but they don't listen to it on repeat for 2 weeks and nothing else at all apart from that one song. Sure, they might really like a food and eat it all the time because it's their favourite, but it's not one of the only safe foods that they will eat, and they eat it every single meal, every single day for a period of time because they get so hyperfixated on this one thing. There's a difference. And again, another example. Everyone can find loud noises annoying and loud, but they might not notice them, or it might not bother them as such. Whereas for me, particularly as an autistic person, I have a massive phobia of balloons, and I think part of that is because when a balloon pops, it feels like a gunshot going off, and it feels like it's hitting me, and that's what I imagine it would feel like. I've never been shot, thankfully. And it's the same with fireworks. They're so loud that it's actually physically painful for me, and for a neurotypical person, they would just go, oh, this is loud, but it wouldn't bother them or affect them in the same way it would an autistic person. That's just an example. Not every autistic person struggles with loud noises, but me personally, I do, and I know a lot of people do that are on the spectrum. Things like this can induce a meltdown or a shutdown, and it can literally take everything out of the person, exhaust the person, to the point where they just can't function anymore. And when all of this happens at the same time, for example, loud noises, and then there's the smell from a perfume nearby, and you're wearing itchy clothes, and everything just seems to be getting too much, then we can go into sensory overload and shut down. And we're not able to zone those things out, whereas I think a lot of neurotypical people are, or it just doesn't bother them as much. And that is really the difference, is anyone can struggle with things that autistic people struggle with. It's just the intensity and the regularity that we struggle with these things. So I was thinking about this, and I was thinking, well, what can people say instead of, well, we're all a little bit autistic? Like, because people are going to say, well, okay, fair enough, I understand your point. What would be more helpful to say to an autistic person? Well, perhaps if someone comes up in a conversation and says, oh yeah, I really don't like going to parties because of the loud noise and it can get a bit overwhelming, perhaps you could say back, oh, I completely understand where you're coming from. It can be really loud sometimes. It's showing that you can relate to someone without having to say, oh, well, I must be autistic because I do that too. And it's things like that. So for example, if I say, oh, well, I really struggle with my change in routine, and so it would be helpful to not move me from this place to that place every time we have a new meeting. and they say, oh yeah, me too, I really don't like it, it's so frustrating, like I must be autistic, perhaps you could say, oh yeah, it can be really frustrating because you get settled somewhere and then they have to move you again. I can totally understand why you would think that, and I'm sure a lot of us feel the same way. But I also understand that it must affect you a lot more than other people, and that's okay. There's things that you could say that are much more helpful than, but we're all a little bit autistic. And I urge you to just have a think that if you've watched this video and you're still on the side of, but we are all a little bit autistic, then perhaps have a reassessment of your life and think, actually, could I be autistic? Because it's not something to joke about or talk about lightheartedly. Autism is a very serious neurological condition, as with any other neurological condition, and you need to understand about what it is, how it affects people, and know what you're talking about to be able to say it in a conversation, because otherwise you can't talk about things that you know nothing about. And I'm not just talking about, I know what autism is, it's talked about all the time on the news. You need to really go in and understand it, and not just what society presents it as, because it is so different, and that's why it's called a spectrum, and it's good to educate yourself. And I hope this video has helped. And that's another thing that people often say to me, well, yeah, it's called a spectrum, so we must all be on it somewhere because it's a spectrum. And the answer is no, you're either on the spectrum or you're not on the spectrum. It's just because there's a spectrum doesn't mean that everyone has to be on it. It's a spectrum for people that are autistic, not everyone's on this autistic spectrum. It's you're autistic and there's a spectrum of it, and then there's a whole another spectrum for people that aren't autistic, neurotypical people, because everyone is different. So sure, whole life is on a spectrum, but autistic spectrum is for autistic people. So don't go assuming that everyone is autistic just because they might relate to something that an autistic person goes through. Know your stuff before you talk about it, because that is so important. And I say that with like the most love and care. Like, I just want people to really understand this condition, so that they can better help people that are autistic in the future. Anyway, that's enough of me rambling. I hope this video sort of made sense. I'm not really sure that it did, but I'm trying to get better. Like, I wrote some notes down, and trying to keep them short. So anyway, if you did enjoy this video, then please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel to receive notifications every time I upload a new video, and leave a comment in the comments down below what your take is on the but we're all a little bit autistic debate. And also let me know what topics you'd like to see me cover in a future video, because I want to talk about things that you want to hear about and that are interesting to you guys. So let me know, and I will see you on the next video.